Curious, Shiro asked about the man's identity. The leader speculated that he might be a merchant dealing with materials. The man, furious, scolded Emile for repeatedly promising to repay him but failing to do so for half a year. He insisted he wouldn't let it go this time. Emile pleaded, promising once again to settle his debt. Shiro approached them, introducing himself as a trader from the town, expressing his interest in understanding the situation. The man, Gerald, softened slightly upon hearing this and introduced himself as a materials merchant. He explained that the first president of the society had borrowed 10 gold coins from him, using the society's main building as collateral in the contract. Gerald declared that if the debt remained unpaid, the building would legally become his property. He impatiently urged Emile to produce the land ownership documents. Emile, naturally resistant, further angered Gerald, who criticized his loyalty to the former president who had abandoned him. Gerald questioned why Emile wouldn't let go of a society heading towards its downfall, suggesting it might be better to do so. Emile clenched his fists, struggling to contain his emotions. After a moment, he responded, stating that his actions were not out of loyalty alone. Emile, holding back tears, asserted that the Silver Moon Society was where he belonged. It was a haven for someone like him, a half-beast often met with societal scorn. This place, filled with both joyful and sad memories, held a special place in his heart. The thought of losing it was unbearable. Shiro pondered his words, recalling a similar situation from his own past. 5 years ago, 2 years after his grandmother's death, his relatives had suggested selling the family home. Upon hearing this, Shiro had pleaded on his knees, begging them not to sell the house filled with memories of his grandmother, as if his life depended on it. He realized that Emile's situation mirrored his own. Despite the crushing debt he faced, Shiro felt a deep empathy as Gerald was about to seize the property deed. Shiro intervened. Emile looked at him with hopeful eyes. Shiro then presented the bear pelt to Gerald, asking if he was interested in buying it. Before Emile could fully grasp the offer, Gerald, recognizing the rare brown bear pelt, grew eager and identified it as a valuable item. He quickly offered to buy it. Shiro didn't refuse but clarified that the pelt belonged to the society. He proposed lending it to Emile, allowing him to repay the debt with the proceeds. The leader of the group, standing beside them, chimed in, offering a similar deal with their own resources. Emile agreed to Gerald's offer, and they settled on a purchase price of 34 gold coins for all the items. Emile quickly added another 2 coins to the total, making it 36 gold coins, plus an additional 2 coins for the bear's testicles. This brought the deal to a close with a net profit of 26 gold coins after paying off the 10 gold coin debt. Having obtained what he wanted, Gerald removed his hat and backpack, expressing a desire for future collaboration with the group. He hoped that the Silver Moon Society would continue to thrive. With the deal finalized, he departed, leaving the 6 members inside the house. Emile turned to the leader and bowed his head in gratitude, but the leader deflected the thanks, suggesting that Shiro was the one who truly deserved it. After all, they were all members of the society. Instead of thanks, the leader proposed that Emile confirm their mission completion and pay them for their work. Feeling a bit deflated, Emile murmured about needing to confirm the mission right in front of Shiro. Shiro, puzzled, asked what the problem was with doing so, considering he was the one who hired them. How could the protection mission be confirmed without the client present? Sensing Emile's hesitation, the leader stepped closer, suspiciously questioning if the interim president was hiding something. He held out his hand, requesting 30 silver coins as payment for completing their mission. Shiro was surprised, recalling that he had paid 100 silver coins for the mission. The remaining 70 should have gone to the society. The atmosphere grew tense as Emile hesitated. Just as he was about to sneak away, the leader quickly grabbed his collar. The other members of Azure Sky readied their magic, preparing to teach him a lesson. Realizing he was in trouble, Emile immediately apologized and tried to escape, but the sound of explosions and his screams echoed continuously. Shiro felt a quiet relief that he hadn't brought Anna, knowing she would have been disappointed with the society's president. Returning to his shop after 3 days, Shiro was greeted by the sight of Anna cleaning the house. Hearing his arrival, she looked up excitedly and asked about his adventurous journey. Setting down his backpack, Shiro used vocabulary and gestures he had honed over 2 decades to vividly recount his thrilling experiences. Anna listened with wide-eyed enthusiasm, concluding that the last 3 days must have been incredibly intense. Anna's admiration grew as she learned about the impressive feat of taking down a giant gray bear. Even with Azure Sky's assistance, Shiro had played a crucial role in their victory. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Shiro went to answer it, and before he could react, he found himself enveloped in a warm embrace from Karen. She hugged him so tightly that he struggled to breathe, leaving Anna, who stood nearby, looking concerned. Despite the lack of air, Shiro couldn't help but enjoy the feeling of Karen's affectionate embrace, even as he had to eventually pull away. Karen worriedly asked if Shiro had been hurt by the gray bear and if he had learned anything during his journey with the explorers. Shiro confidently replied that he had indeed learned a lot and mentioned that if they managed to restock in time, the town inspector would definitely be impressed. Karen, grinning, teased him about the restock and suggested he might have a storage space or a container with spatial capabilities. Initially, Shiro denied it but eventually admitted the truth after Karen's persistent questioning. He revealed that he was just bluffing, knowing it was rare for someone to possess such skills. Karen had guessed based on the numerous matchboxes he kept, showcasing the mayor's cunning understanding of matters. Shifting back to the main topic, Karen was curious about what Shiro planned to sell next, and Anna was equally interested. Shiro showed them a prototype of his upcoming product, leaving Karen amazed by its existence and contemplating its potential impact once released. Later in the afternoon, Liera and Neska visited Shiro's shop. Since their encounter with the gray bear, they had started dating. Liera mentioned that Emil had told him about an inspector from another guild coming to their town, hoping this would lead to the city's expansion with new branches. The inspector was from a reputable guild, raising hopes for the town's development. Shiro was taken aback to hear that the situation was even worse than he had thought. Liera, explaining the guild's reputation, mentioned that many guilds had notoriously bad reputations, citing examples like the 3 demon branches and the poisonous dragon Fong. However, the most infamous one was the Labyrinth Raiders Guild. Shiro wondered if Karen knew about this guild's existence. Liera wasn't certain, but she suspected that Karen might be aware of them since only travelers or locals tend to know about such misconduct. Hearing this, Shiro pondered how this world, lacking smartphones and social media, allowed such crimes to continue unchecked. He dreaded the possibility that the worst of the travelers' guilds might come to survey the land, hoping that nothing bad would happen to Nino. Anna and Shiro had been waiting for the city inspector for quite some time, but there was still no sign of them. Anna wondered if they had gotten lost. Shiro doubted it, as there was only one straight road leading from here to the next town, and besides, Karen had already been waiting at the gate since yesterday. As the evening bell rang, Anna asked Shiro to close up early. He went to the door, bid her farewell, and decided to close the shop for the day. Just then, a beautiful woman arrived, expressing her desire to see the store. Shiro welcomed her and invited her to browse freely. The woman picked up a box of matches and examined it. Shiro approached to show her how to strike a match, noticing her eyes widen in surprise. Next to her was a silver box, and Shiro explained that it was a new product, a space blanket designed to warm the body. The woman immediately tried it on, draping it over her shoulders and marveling at this innovative item. The space blanket had already become a favorite among travelers, impressing even Karen. The woman was equally smitten with its thin yet incredibly warm design. There were also foldable water bottles and other innovative products. After trying out a few items, the woman left hastily, mentioning urgent matters, leaving Shiro curious but respectful of her privacy. A few days later, Anna burst in excitedly, calling out to Shiro that the inspector had arrived in town and was at the mayor's place. According to Karen's plan, the inspector was supposed to be given a tour of the town, including a stop at Shiro's shop for a discussion. However, the plan had fallen apart, and now everyone was gathered at the Silver Moon Society. The mayor had sent Dana to fetch Shiro as quickly as possible. Upon Shiro's arrival, Karen whispered to him that the inspector seemed a bit odd and advised him to be cautious. Shiro exchanged a calm, understanding look with Karen, her eyes subtly conveying her manipulative expertise. Karen seized the moment to introduce Shiro to the inspector, Gavies, proudly declaring him as the town's pride and a distinguished merchant. Anna, standing nearby, chimed in, introducing herself as a store employee. Inspector Gavies barely acknowledged the introductions, his body language dismissive. With a sneer, he commented mockingly about the shop's only employee being a child, expressing his disdain as he ran a finger over a perfectly clean table, clearly looking for something to criticize. He criticized the building for being dirty and accused Emile, the cleaning officer, of laziness. This baseless criticism enraged Emile, who had painstakingly cleaned the area. Gavies seemed to enjoy the turmoil he caused, laughing loudly and suggesting that the shop's chaos was their own fault. He then turned to Keela, a half-human, half-beast worker, belittling her inefficiency and callously commenting that her presence was a waste of effort. Emile's anger flared, and he was on the verge of attacking when Karen quickly intervened. Karen calmly asked Gavies if he had seen the items sold in Shiro's shop. In response, Gavies nonchalantly struck a match, casually tossed it to the floor, and slumped in his chair. With an air of arrogance, he announced that the Labyrinth Raiders Guild intended to establish a branch in their town. However, his announcement came with several outrageous conditions. First, he demanded that the new branch be the only guild allowed in the town. Second, it must be completely exempt from taxes. He further stipulated that the town's residents, under Karen's leadership, should bear the entire cost of constructing the guild building. But the boldest demand was yet to come. Gavies expressed his desire to have exclusive privileges in Shiro's shop, allowing him to acquire and sell items for free. Shiro met this with a piercing, emotionless stare, which Gavies misinterpreted as incomprehension, preparing to mock him. However, Karen swiftly stepped in to negotiate. She acknowledged the potential benefits the guild's presence could bring to the town, but expressed concerns about their proposed monopoly. Before she could fully articulate her point, Gavies impatiently interrupted, explaining that the guild planned to buy all the matches and resell them nationwide, promising immense profits. He justified his demands by claiming that selling to them was equivalent to selling to the entire country. Hearing these terms, Shiro paused to reflect. The offer was indeed tempting. But the tempting offer didn't sway Shiro. He firmly declined, stating their stock was already maxed out. Karen also disagreed, expressing her desire to renegotiate the terms from the beginning with Gavies. Gavies, visibly sweating, grew increasingly angry. In a fit of rage, he grabbed a bottle of wine from the table and hurled it against the wall behind Karen, mocking the town as a pathetic place inhabited only by weak, useless travelers. Shiro quickly countered, pointing out that Nina Rich still boasted rare monsters, plants, and metals in the eastern forest. This potential made many travelers consider settling there permanently. He questioned if this wasn't enough to warrant opening a branch. Far from being appeased, Gavies became even more furious. He grabbed Shiro's collar, shouting that only fools would wallow in a slum like this. He claimed that those who couldn't compete in big cities ended up hiding in such a run-down place. The tension skyrocketed, with everyone's anger reaching a boiling point. Gavies continued to assert that with the guild's investment, the town would thrive, but it all hinged on Shiro's decision. Seeing Shiro's hesitation, Gavies hurled more insults, suggesting that if Shiro agreed to collaborate, they would hire better staff than the weaklings they currently had. This infuriated Shiro, whose eyes widened in shock. When Gavies repeated his demeaning remarks about the current staff, calling them a bunch of useless fools, dogs, and half-beasts, Shiro realized further discussion was pointless. He refused to back down. In a flash, he punched Gavies square in the face, yelling at him to get out, calling him a dead dog. The incident reminded Shiro of a similar situation he encountered in the modern world. Back then, he had asked for leave from a corrupt company and ended up punching his boss, who had been berating a colleague who had helped him a lot. The boss's face and attitude bore a striking resemblance to Gavies, triggering Shiro's violent response. People around Shiro watched him with admiration. Karen added that Gavies had also slightly touched his chest. Shiro glared at the inspector and then stepped forward, grabbing his hair. Panic spread among the onlookers, with pleas for mercy and loud cries echoing endlessly. The roars from the Celestial Voice Group also joined in, adding to the cacophony. In no time, Inspector Gavies lay on the ground, closing his swollen eyes. Purple saliva sprayed as Gavies lay defeated. Meanwhile, Shiro stood with his head bowed. Despite his distaste for violence, Gavies had crossed the line by insulting his employees and exploiting Karen's hospitality for his own gain. Shiro couldn't stand by and tolerate such disrespect. Anna, moved by his actions, rushed to Shiro and hugged him, crying uncontrollably. Somehow, Gavies found the strength to get up. He hurled insults at Shiro, threatening that as a high-ranking member of the Labyrinth Raiders Guild, he would make Shiro and the entire town pay. Karen stepped forward resolutely, informing Gavies that his actions could be seen as a declaration of war against the town. If that were the case, she, as mayor, would have to report this to Margrave, the regional governor of Bashir. Hearing this, Gavies began to sweat profusely, stammering in fear and realizing the gravity of his words. With a softer tone, he suggested to Shiro that if he handed over the rights to the matches, they could pretend the incident never happened. Enraged, Shiro grabbed Gavies and shouted that he had no interest in doing business with them and would kick them out if they dared to come to his shop. Gavies, desperate, begged to buy the rights at any cost. But seeing Shiro unmoved, he turned to Karen, trying to continue the discussion about opening a branch in the town. Karen, now disgusted by his behavior, also refused. Liar couldn't contain his laughter, finding humor in Gavies's desperate situation. Humiliated and angry, Gavies insulted Liar as a low-class traveler. This was the final straw for Liar, who had endured Gavies's repeated insults. He quickly approached Gavies and grabbed him by the neck, lifting him off the ground. Shiro intervened, reminding Liar that violence wasn't the answer, even though he himself had just beaten Gavies. Reluctantly, Liar dropped Gavies to the ground. Hitting the trash would only dirty his hands. Inspector Gavies, terrified, crawled towards the main door. Everyone was on edge after the failed negotiation. Karen advised everyone not to dwell on the unpleasant encounter with the arrogant inspector. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Thinking Gavies had returned, a brave Liar went to open it, fists ready, but was met by a beautiful young woman. She bowed to everyone and mentioned she had rushed over after hearing the mayor was present because she had an urgent matter to discuss. Shiro recognized her as the woman who had visited his shop several times recently. She introduced herself as Nei Mirage, a member of the Blessing Fair Guild. Everyone was surprised, as the Blessing Fair was the largest guild in the country. Karen, suspicious, asked about her intentions. Nei smiled and explained that the guild was interested in collaborating with the town to open a new branch and wondered what the mayor thought about it.